Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. I'm Sriram and I'm an intern at CyberSapiens as a cybersecurity trainee. And I'm here to present you a presentation on one of the critical vulnerabilities in Web VAPT, which is file path traversal and file inclusions. Firstly, before file path traversal, let's discuss on what is a file path. In simple terms, it can be referred to a house address or rooms in a house. It's like an organized folders and documents. Every computer system has a file path in common, irrespective of which operating system it is running. It can be Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. As you can see, root is the main directory which holds the subfolders such as users, applications, and volumes. And when it comes to users, it's Keith and Nigel, which is only in the users. And when it comes to the volumes, so it can be USB, Mac, and in the USB, it's a Unix and Perl cores, which has applications, code, data, and documents. So, for example, let me show you what is a root directory. So when you get into the root directory, you can see all the subfolders which are applications, cores, binary, temporary files, user, and volumes, and so on. So this is the file directory which I'm having it on Mac OS. And coming to the point. So coming to the topic, file path traversal. So when you go into a web app, each website has its own subdirectory for contact page, forms page, and etc. So what is a file path? File path traversal, also known as directory traversal, a type of web vulnerability, allows an attacker to read the OS files, such as local files on the server running on the application. So for example, when you go into this website, when you observe the HTTP address or URL, so it's just end up with a slash, so it's called the home page of the website. When you get into categories, artists, or disclaimer, if you observe, there's added with disclaimer.php. So this website is running on PHP, HTML, and so on. So you can just manipulate this to get into like artists.php, and you'll go straight into the artist page. So this is how file path works, and file path traversal. The attackers exploit this vulnerability by manipulating and manipulating and abusing the web application's URL to access the files outside the application's root directory. So for example, let's take cafeteria or an office space. Not everyone are allowed into their admin room or administrating room or something. So only 13 people are allowed into their restricted access room. So what does a thief do is he will manipulate or abuse the biometrics and tries to get into the restricted access room. In the same way, what hackers does is they'll try to abuse the web application URL to access into the files which are outside the application's root directory or server. And any application which is exposed as an HTTP based interface is vulnerable file path traversal attack. So any web application which has a HTTP based interface is vulnerable to file path traversal attack. So testing methodology for file path traversal is what does the hacker does is hacker identifies web application with insufficient filtering or validation of browser input from users. So as you can see, the URL which has a file equals to file name.php. So this is the valid URL, and what he gets the valid get request from the server. So what he does is he requests the get request to he uses this get request to retrieve and return an expected file from the web server. And what does hacker does is he modifies URL string using dot slash directive in attempt to retrieve desired file from a higher directory. And the get request is performed and hacker is granted access to file containing sensitive information without proper validation. So let's jump on to this methodology. So here's the lab, which you can access on portsfigure.net. Let's access the lab and turn on the burp suite to the epoxy HTTP and turn on the proxy. So when you get into this website and click view details, and you can see it catches the request of the website, and for suppose take this and send it to the repeater, and you can see the product ID equals to 2. So click send and let's see the response. Yeah, as you can see, this is the response which it has as a page of a product 2. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna abuse this URL says so this image source is the image file name equals to 51.jpg. Let's copy this file path and try to edit this and hit dot slash etc slash passwd and click send. Sometimes you need to take off a part of this and send. Our argument name, let's try this. Oh yeah, that's the path. Yeah, as you can see, the HTTP 200 okay. That means we are able to pass through this security and get into this etc folder which has passwords contained in it. So all these are the passwords which we got it from etc file or folder. So that means this website is vulnerable to this file path traversal. And the next topic is the file inclusion. So the file inclusion is a type of web vulnerability that occurs when an application includes user controlled input into a file or a file path. This can allow an attackers to access files and directories outside of the intended scope. So file inclusion is a type of vulnerability which affects web applications that are reliant on a script time running, and it occurs when an application allows a user to submit input files and upload them into their server. So this vulnerability are often found on poorly written application, and this vulnerability allows attackers to read the files and sometimes execute files on the victim server. But sometimes in case of remote file inclusion, the attacker can run or execute code hosted on the attacker's machine. So attackers provide malicious input. They can gain unauthorized access to sensitive files and directories. This can lead to data breaches sensitive information exposure, and other security risks. File inclusion attacks often involve common attack vectors such as file uploads, form submissions, and URL manipulation. These attacks can be used to exploit vulnerabilities in web applications, allowing attackers to access sensitive data and files. So there are two types of file inclusions, which is local file inclusion and remote file inclusion. Let's go to local file inclusion. So local file inclusion is a bit similar to this same like file path traversal. So what this hacker does is hacker identifies web application with insufficient filtering or validation of browser input from the users, and hacker modifies URL string using // directive to ensure directory path traversal is possible. And then hacker backdoor uploads malicious .php file to host server and attempts to locate script using same method of step 2. And request is improperly validated, and the hacker is permitted to run malicious script on host application. So let's hop onto the practical. And I've got this web DVW already running on my Docker, so all I have to do is log into this Safari localhost, listen in on 8888, and let's go to the file inclusion, and you can see the file 1.php and file 2.php and file 3.php. So none of them says the exact info of the PHP of this website. So what we're gonna do over here is let us check whether this website is vulnerable to LFI or not. So let's hop on to etc.password. So it shows nothing. So let's go to php info.php. So yeah, we can see the details of the PHP configuration files, the Apache server, Apache handler, Apache environment, and Apache headers information. So definitely this website is vulnerable to LFI, as we have manipulated this URL to hop onto different files and folders which are not allowed to accessible by anyone. So let's hop onto this. So the remote code execution via local file inclusion, the LFI can be exploited to achieve RCE by injecting malicious code into the included file. An application includes a user controlled input into a file path, allowing an attacker to access local files, or an attacker injects malicious code into the included file, allowing them to execute arbitrary code. So for example, as you can see, suppose an application includes a file using this following code, which says php file equals to get file include file, or php system get cmd, which is for command prompt. So the attacker can actually inject this code into the file path, into the local files, and he can get access to the command prompt, which is the main part of the computer system. So he can actually control it remotely on his own local network. Let's go to the remote file inclusion. So what is a remote file inclusion? RFI is a type of file inclusion vulnerability that occurs when an application includes a remote file user control input. And RFI occurs when an application includes a remote file or directory using a user control input, allowing an attacker to access remote files and directories. And an attacker can manipulate a URL to access a remote file or directory. An attacker can submit malicious form data to access a remote file or directory. An attacker can upload a malicious file to access a remote file or directory. So in this remote file inclusion, let's hop onto this testing methodology for RFI. So what we're gonna do over here is we create a folder saying RFI and cd RFI. So there are no contents in this folder. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a shell.php file and echo RFI is successful. Control O, X, Control X. So let's check whether our payload is ready. So what we're gonna do is cat shell.php. So yeah, so this is ready. So we gotta take this online onto our IP address by bringing it live on a HTTP server with the following contents in this folder: listening on 8080 port, and check for the IP address which is live onto your IP address, listening on your local port. So my IP address in this case is 192.168.29.178. Excuse me. So let's check on 8080 port. Yep, that's working. So here what we're gonna do is, let me do that again. We're gonna copy this file, we're gonna copy this URL, and what we're gonna do here is let's go to the file inclusion, and when you see it's a file 1, file 2 and file 3, so this is an include page which we are supposed to see. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna add this URL into a URL, and when you check you can see here the directory listing for shell.php. So it is vulnerable to remote code execution, file inclusion. So in this case an attacker can actually control or inject a malicious code or a shell file or PHP file or a payload from one server to a different server remotely. So this is the main point of so this is the point of remote code execution. So in conclusion, we've explored what is file path traversal and the file path and its test methodologies. We have discussed about file inclusions and types of file inclusions and their test methodologies. I hope this presentation has provided you with valuable insights and sparked your interest in file path traversal and file inclusions. Thank you for attention. Thank you, all of you.